talking leadership, talking self-leadership. The second thing in leading ourselves is not just relational leadership, but how we're doing spiritually. Our involvement with our spirituality, our digging our wells. I believe we need to develop the ability to resource ourselves, to find how to resource our own wells and fill our own wells when it comes to this thing of spiritually. We need our wells to become deeper and the water to become purer in our spiritual walk. Somebody said your leadership height won't exceed your spiritual depth. And I think that's incredibly important for us to remember. We're giving ourselves and we're pouring out in leadership and ministry and always giving to others. But we better be filling our wells and resourcing ourselves when it comes to this thing of spiritual leadership. I love that story in Australia. I love the picture of Australia. If you've ever visited that great land, you'll see that if you go in the outback, it's this open space where there's nothing. But there's all these cattle farm, all the animals hang together. And if you're going to ask an Australian cattle farmer, why is it that you have endless miles of open space, very few fences, but all your cattle hang together? They'll tell you that their role is not to put up fences, but to dig fresh wells. For wherever there's fresh wells, the animals will hang there and drink from the well. I think it's similar in our own ministry and life and leadership. We don't have to put fences up to keep people involved. If we just keep digging our wells, our own wells, fresh water will always draw. The life of God always draws people into what we're involved in. So we need these wells. Clearly in Scripture, Genesis 26, we know the whole Abraham and Isaac story. And Isaac had to reopen the wells of his father that had been stopped up by the Philistines. And we're going to keep digging our wells. We need wells that sustain us, sustain our ministry, sustain our family life, sustain our leadership, sustain all that we're involved in, friends. And I've got to tell you, I don't believe there's any shortcuts to this. It's making time, spending time, and seeing the need. So what are some of the things that perhaps would dry up or close our wells in ministry and leadership? Well, I think one of the biggest things we face in leadership and ministry is this thing of comparison. So what would dry up our wells? One of the big keys is the curse of comparison. It's a curse. I don't know anyone who doesn't struggle at some degree with this. But when you begin to compare, you become, understand that there is this curse that comes upon us. It dries up who we are. It kills the life of God in us, and it destroys us spiritually. We need to get to that place like David in Psalm 16, where he was able to say, the boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Wherever they are, whatever you're facing, whatever you're involved in, if it's from God, learn to live in this great space of, for me, boundary lines are pleasant. Surely I've got this delightful inheritance. And that to me would give us the strength and not to compete and compare. And that gives us the ability to celebrate what God's doing with others. Another one is fear or cowering. Fear is probably one of the biggest challenges we all face. Fear of the future, fear of failure, fear of ministry, fear of people, whatever it be. And fear, I believe, dries up the wells, dries up, kills, destroys us spiritually, sucks the life of God. I'm amazed how quickly the life of God is taken from us when we're living in fear or we're fearing something. And so we've got to deal with fear and understand it erodes our conviction, and we do what's necessary pragmatically. We approach the future pragmatically, and that's a dangerous thing to do when you're leading God's people in ministry, to just do things pragmatically rather than to hear God. But fear causes us to just do what works rather than if it's right or biblical. Also conflict, and we're involved in conflict. We understand there's a battle blazing in leadership and leading God's people, and there's a good and evil. We understand all that, but conflict, constant conflict, we have to understand that destroys the life of God. It sinks us spiritually. It closes the wells. In 2 Timothy 2:23, Paul says, don't have anything to do with foolish and stupid arguments. I love how clear that is, because they produce quarrels. And that's the reality. A lot of leaders are involved in all this stupid argument, all these things that might seem relevant but are irrelevant, and they actually suck in the life of God. They're destroying our spirituality, and they're destroying our ability to bring life to the situation that we're involved in. And so the challenge for all of us, including me, is that we are not getting involved in conflicts that we're not called to fight. We eventually will burn that out. and lose our way, and definitely will not finish the race.